My grandfather was studying a perfectly ripe cantaloupe when a sharp, unmistakable shriek sliced to the calm hum of Riverside Market. Anyone who'd spent more than 5 minutes in Pine Valley knew that voice. Patricia Holloway, the self-appointed enforcer of all things community standards. She was the kind of person who printed her own business cards with titles no one had asked her to have. Grandpa looked up from the melon display, his weathered hands still cradling the fruit he'd been evaluating for the better part of 3 minutes. "Excuse me?" he asked, blinking in confusion at the interruption to his peaceful Thursday routine. Patricia marched toward him, her HOA badge swinging from a lanyard that probably cost more than most people's grocery bill. "You've been banned from this establishment, Mr. Brennan. Effective immediately," she declared, punctuating every word with a tap of her clipboard. A clipboard I could see from the dairy section was topped with a color-coded spreadsheet titled Market Violation Log. "Grandpa," Stanley Brennan, gently set down the cantaloupe and adjusted his glasses. "Young lady, I've been shopping here for 15 years. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Patricia announced, her voice loud enough to make half the store turn their heads. "Your repeated violations of shopping efficiency standards have been documented and reviewed. Please exit the premises immediately, or I'll be forced to call security." I watched as my 82-year-old grandfather shuffled toward the exit, his weekly ritual interrupted, confusion and embarrassment written across his face. Patricia trailed behind him like a warden escorting a prisoner, her sensible shoes clicking against the linoleum with every self-important step. That was when I decided to step in. From my spot behind the yogurt display, I cleared my throat. "Patricia," I said evenly, "you just banned the owner's grandfather from his own store. I hope that clipboard doubles as a resume, because you're going to need it." Her face drained of color as she spun around. "Nathan Brennan," she stammered, clearly recognizing me despite the jeans and polo shirt instead of my usual business attire. "I didn't realize you were here today." "Clearly," I replied, walking past her to help Grandpa back inside. "Grandpa, go ahead and finish your shopping." Patricia was just leaving. But Patricia Holloway wasn't the type to back down easily. For 3 years, she'd ruled the Pine Valley HOA like her own personal fiefdom, turning our once quiet neighborhood into a petty bureaucracy of citations and compliance notices. "I'm Nathan Brennan, co-owner of Riverside Market, along with my sister, Rachel. Our family has run this place for generations, long before Pine Valley had an HOA, back when this land was still farmland and open sky. The market is more than just a grocery store. It's a 20,000-square-foot cornerstone of the community, surrounded now by a sea of sterile chain stores. Grandpa spent 40 years working here before retiring, and his Thursday morning shopping trips were sacred. He'd show up at 8:30 sharp, grab a small cart, and spend exactly 90 minutes wandering the aisles, chatting with employees who'd known him for decades and selecting produce with the care of a man who'd built his life around good food and honest work. Patricia's crusade against him had started about 6 weeks earlier with small, ridiculous complaints. First, she demanded to know why that elderly gentleman was allowed to monopolize the sample station. When she learned he was family, she escalated, filing formal grievances about his inefficient shopping patterns. Her notes were borderline obsessive. Subject lingered 17 minutes in produce section, exceeding recommended browsing time by 11 minutes. Subject engaged cashier in 4-minute conversation about grandchildren, creating artificial queue delay. My personal favorite. Subject tested firmness of 7 avocados before selection, potential contamination risk. At first, I'd laughed him off as the ramblings of a bored control freak. But Patricia wasn't one to quit. She began showing up at the store during Grandpa's usual shopping time, clipboard in hand, following him around and making disapproving noises whenever he paused too long in front of tomatoes. The breaking point came the previous Thursday, when she confronted him directly, lecturing him about his disruptive shopping methodology and its effect on optimal traffic flow. Grandpa, bless him, had just smiled and offered her a fresh strawberry from the display. Patricia had actually written Grandpa a formal warning, on HOA letterhead, no less, which she'd apparently been carrying around in her purse for just such an occasion. Standing there now in my own store, watching her clutch that clipboard like it was a life raft, I felt my patience drain away completely. "Patricia," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'm calling Rachel. We need to discuss your behavior." "There's nothing to discuss," she replied crisply, regaining her composure. "The Pine Valley HOA has clear authority over all commercial properties within the neighborhood boundaries. Your grandfather has repeatedly violated the community commerce guidelines approved at last month's board meeting." I actually laughed. Community commerce guidelines? "Patricia, those rules apply to garage sales and lemonade stands, not to established businesses. And even if they did, which they don't, you have zero authority to ban anyone from private property." Her cheeks flushed crimson. "The HOA charter clearly states that we have oversight of all activities that impact neighborhood character and quality of life. Your grandfather's disruptive shopping habits fall squarely within our jurisdiction." Rachel arrived about 10 minutes later, storming in from the back office where she'd been working on inventory. My sister had even less tolerance for Patricia's nonsense than I did. "Let me get this straight," Rachel said, her tone dangerously calm. "You've been stalking our grandfather, documenting how he picks out fruit, and now you've tried to ban him from our family business?" "I've been monitoring compliance with community standards," Patricia corrected primly, as if rewording it made her sound reasonable. Rachel pulled out her phone. "Perfect. Then you'll be thrilled to know I'm calling our attorney. I'm sure he'll love hearing how the HOA president has been harassing an elderly man and interfering with our business operations." Patricia's confidence wavered. "That's not necessary," she said quickly. "I was simply trying to maintain order and efficiency for all shoppers by banning an 82-year-old man for taking too long to pick out a cantaloupe." I asked, "Patricia, my grandfather spent 40 years building the store into what it is. He knows every employee's name, their kids' names, their birthdays. Half the people who work here got their first jobs from him. And you want to ban him because he doesn't meet your imaginary efficiency standards?" By now, a small crowd had gathered. Regular customers, people who'd known Grandpa for years, were giving Patricia the kind of looks that could curdle milk. Marcus Washington, our longtime deli manager, stepped forward. "Mr. Stanley taught me everything I know about this place," he said. "Man's a legend. He can take as long as he wants, anywhere he wants." Patricia was cornered, and she knew it. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "This is exactly the problem," she declared. "This favoritism, this old boy club mentality. The HOA exists to ensure fair and equal treatment for all residents." "Fair and equal?" Rachel shot back. "You mean like when you find the Hendersons because their grandkids' bikes were in the driveway for 20 minutes? Or when you sent Mr. Kim a violation notice because his rose bushes were 2 inches over regulation height?" I raised a hand before Rachel's list of Patricia's tyrannical acts got any longer. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to leave now. You're going to stop harassing my grandfather. And if I ever see you following him with that clipboard again, I'll have you formally trespass from this property." Patricia stiffened. "You can't do that. I shop here. I have rights as a customer." "Actually," I said, pulling up the digital lease on my phone, "according to our agreement with the Pine Valley Development Corporation, Riverside Market reserves the right to refuse service to anyone who disrupts business operations. Harassing elderly customers definitely counts." "This is discrimination," Patricia sputtered. "No," Rachel said coolly. "This is consequences. Something you seem unfamiliar with." Patricia stormed out, heels clicking furiously against the tile, but not before announcing she would be calling an emergency HOA meeting to address this gross violation of community partnership standards. I wasn't worried. Half the HOA board shopped at our store, and every single one of them adored Grandpa. Sure enough, the meeting was a train wreck. Patricia arrived armed with a 20-slide PowerPoint titled Commercial Entity Overreach in Residential Zones, complete with grainy security camera stills of Grandpa loitering in various aisles. It was by all accounts her downfall in slow motion. Patricia's grand presentation lasted all of 5 minutes before Helen Patterson, the HOA treasurer, finally cut her off. "Patricia, that's Mr. Stanley you're showing up there," Helen said, pointing to projection. "He helped my daughter get her first job when she was 16. Are you seriously asking us to support banning him from his own family store? Patricia stiffened, her voice trembling but still defiant. This isn't about personal relationships. It's about maintaining standards and protecting the shopping experience for all residents. The only person disrupting anyone's shopping experience is you, said board member James Liu. I've seen you following Mr. Stanley around with that clipboard. Frankly, it's creepy. The vote that followed was swift and unanimous. Not only did the board reject Patricia's so-called community commerce guidelines, they also voted to issue a formal apology to the Brennan family. Patricia sat frozen, the color draining from her face as board members, one after another, shared stories of how Grandpa had touched their lives over the years. But the real fallout came the following week. Patricia worked as an office manager for a local real estate firm, and her boss, Janet Morrison, happened to be one of our regular customers. Janet had been in the store during the confrontation and had seen the entire spectacle unfold firsthand. I can't have someone who harasses elderly people representing my company, Janet told me later. I've put Patricia on administrative leave pending review. This isn't the first complaint I've gotten about her bullying tactics, but it'll definitely be the last. Meanwhile, Rachel and I decided to turn Patricia's ugliness into something good. We announced Stanley Brennan Appreciation Week at Riverside Market. Featuring Grandpa's favorite items on special, a photo display spanning his decades in store, and even a video tribute from employees and customers alike. The response was overwhelming. Customers shared stories about Grandpa's kindness. The local news picked it up, and soon the headline read, HOA president attempts to ban elderly man from family store. It didn't exactly paint Patricia in a flattering light. The story went viral, sparking a wave of HOA horror stories from across the country. In Pine Valley, Patricia's name became shorthand for petty tyranny. Pulling a Patricia quickly entered local vocabulary. Her downfall became complete at the next regular HOA meeting. On the agenda, a vote of no confidence in Patricia's leadership, proposed by several board members. The community center was packed, standing room only, as resident after resident stood to voice their grievances. When the votes were tallied, the result wasn't even close, 47-3. Only Patricia and her two remaining loyalists voted in her favor. As the decision was announced, Patricia's composure cracked. The clipboard she once wielded like a royal scepter slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a hollow clatter. This is all because of that old man and his family, she said bitterly. They turned everyone against me. No, Patricia, Helen Patterson said gently but firmly. You turned everyone against you the moment you decided your made-up rules mattered more than simple human decency. Local news cameras captured Patricia's silent exit, power walking past reporters, clutching a cardboard box full of HOA materials, refusing to answer questions. The next day, word spread that she'd been officially terminated from her job at the real estate firm. Janet Morrison released a statement. Our company cannot employ someone whose actions are inconsistent with our commitment to community, respect, and compassion. By the end of the week, Patricia had listed her house for sale. The for sale sign went up Tuesday morning, and by Wednesday, the new HOA board had issued her a violation notice for placing it 2 inches too close to the sidewalk. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Financially, Patricia was in trouble. Between legal fees from fighting her dismissal, the loss of her job, and the rushed sale of her home, she was facing tens of thousands of dollars in losses. When she tried to file for unemployment, her termination for cause complicated matters further. The last anyone saw of Patricia Holloway in Pine Valley was at her house closing. She'd sold for $30,000 under asking just to get out quickly. As she signed the papers, the closing attorney, another one of our regulars, passed along a message from Grandpa. No hard feelings. Patricia's reaction was immediate. She burst into tears, bolted from the office, and in her haste, left behind the very symbol of her downfall, her beloved clipboard.